Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nine to Never by Zendrop. My name is Kennedy Meek and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Zendrop and also the host of this podcast. Today, I got to interview one of the coolest people I have been following on social media for the longest time, Giselle Ugarte. She is the founder and CEO of Action Forward, which exists to coach and support forward-facing influencers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to use the power of social media to launch new revenue streams, amplify messaging, and attract meaningful communities. Giselle has created an amazing community for herself on TikTok, which is actually how I found her. And on today's episode, we discussed all things social media, how to utilize online marketing to benefit your brand, the action of truly choosing the type of branding you want to put forth online, and also a little bit about influencer marketing as well. I love getting to know her a little bit further, and I know that you guys will love this episode too, so keep on listening. Giselle, thank you so much for coming on again today. I'm so excited to be able to speak with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that TikTok brought us together.
I know, I love TikTok, man. It's been an amazing way to connect people, specifically during a pandemic.
Yes, yes. And I would even argue that in some ways it's brought us even closer together. And you probably feel like you already know me to some extent because of it.
That is so true. That's so true. So why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself, give me some background on how you started, give our listeners more information about who you are.
My name is Giselle Ugarte. I'm based in Minneapolis at the moment, but spent 9 years in LA and part-time in New York as well. And I am the founder and CEO of Action Forward, which is my consultancy that is dedicated to helping people of influence, as I like to call them, entrepreneurs, people of influence, forward-facing entrepreneurs, use the power of social media. And right now, my favorite playground is TikTok, also Clubhouse as well. But the way that I got started was my career accidentally started on a little platform called YouTube. And I say little because at the time, about 11 years ago, it was little. It was not owned by Google. It was not a verb. Everyone and their mom did not have a blog. Influencer definitely was not a job title, let alone a word that people would roll their eyes when they would hear. And I was pursuing a career in entertainment news. No one would hire me, even though I went to a great journalism school, USC, fight on. But I just learned, how to use my camera, and I wanted to learn how to use audio and lighting, and I figured that I could put videos on this platform and no one would see them. Or if they did see them, I looked forward to being able to share a link. Like that was a new thing at the time because previously, as somebody who worked in entertainment, we had to send media kits, which were in these bulky folders with like DVDs, and like press kits were like, it was a physical kit that you would have to send in a super bulky manila envelope. And what ended up happening was I found this extraordinarily average community of creators. Creators was not even a word at the time. And they had hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers, and nobody was talking about it. And I studied that like crazy. I felt like that could be a differentiator or a way to get my foot in the door. I never wanted to be a YouTuber ever. That wasn't even a thing. And quite frankly, I thought the platform was beneath me. And now I'm kicking myself for not pursuing that more seriously. But I used it to set myself apart with agencies, in audition rooms, with network, and it totally catapulted my career, just even having the expertise, but then also the blend of on-camera experience. So I was the first real life face for CoverGirl Cosmetics. I think you can still see my face on vending machines for proactive skincare solutions. I did international and national television and commercials. And then I worked my way into radio, where I kind of got sick of looking at myself and felt like I kind of needed to deconstruct and unlearn this irrational level of perfection I'd set for myself in the world of entertainment. And from there, went into becoming a corporate marketing executive, working heavily in influencer marketing. And now it's weird how all of my worlds have somehow collided, and everything that is my career of being a very forward-facing CEO and coaching influencers and people of influence because of the crazy twisty beaten path that I had to go down for my own career. And so the focus for me is speaking and consulting and coaching, but also getting to network with awesome people like you and have conversations that will hopefully inspire people to put themselves out there or to be a little bit more strategic in doing so.
Amazing. And I think that's what I love about how you present yourself online. A lot of those pieces of that story I hadn't heard before, and some of it I did know. But what I've always admired about how you create content is that there is no level of perfectionism that you're trying to achieve. It's about getting information out there, it's about connecting with your audience and being more knowledgeable and less about the perfectionistic side. And I know that creators and online store owners and internet entrepreneurs have this stress about being perfect all the time. When if we're going to, I guess simplify it down to what it really is, it's testing different types of creatives, it's testing how you can connect with your audience, and whatever lands, and it might not be the way you want to present yourself, right? It might be the way that's best receptive to your audience. And that is such an interesting journey to go through, specifically when you're battling these concepts of being so perfectionistic because your face is so in front of everyone at all times. If you're on the proactive cover girl, marketing, your face is just out there. But at the same time, you have no control over it. And that's such a stressful thing to be in when you're a creator.
It's so much easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself out there, not caring what people think. I joke to anyone who listens just simply the fact of when you see me on camera and I am not done up, or in some cases not wearing makeup at all, or my hair is in a messy bun, or I'm in sweats, the reality is that took so much more work than a lot of the videos that you see of me where I have the makeup and the spray tan and the perfect outfit and the hair perfectly into place. It took me years and years of unlearning for me to finally be able to show up anywhere in that way and exactly as I am. Now if you were to put me on stage in pajama pants and no makeup, I could easily get up and deliver a keynote and kick ass and care a lot, but not in the way that I would be wondering what everyone's thinking. I would be very sure of myself, where previously if I'm showing up to a meeting, I would feel like I have to dress for the job I want, or, dress to impress. And there is truth to that, absolutely. But I very much don't try to conform to that anymore, because I do feel like when you're so caught up in the superficiality of it, you end up thinking more about self rather than how you're serving. And that's where I know that a lot of the quote unquote influencers of the world are going to have a career that is short lived if they don't place any importance on who they want to serve as well as who they currently are serving. So, I mean, I think that's definitely a part of it. And there was something that I was going to say, and I totally blanked out on what it was. But I definitely see you, and I hear you, and I think the biggest excuse that people make. Oh, now I remember what it was. 2020 happened, and our world shut down, right? Like everything shut down.
Yeah.
And for so many of you, you rely on being in person to do what it is that you do. I know you've probably said at some point, well, if I could just get them in person, then I could fill in the
Or
blank,
on the phone,
get,
or a
yes,
more front facing communication. Yeah.
exactly. If I could just, but because I'm missing that physical personal contact, like, I don't know. I hate social media. It's so fake. It's so vapid. It's so superficial. It's so filtered. The reality is that the world shut down. And for me, it was like, oh my goodness, this is my opportunity to be able to prove to people what I've known for so long, which is, looking at YouTube 10 years ago and studying the algorithm and the descriptions and the tags and how often people were uploading and the times and blah, 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 blah. Something that I learned then is something that is so true now, which is that, yes, there certainly is some truth to the follower count and the like count and how many uploads you do and the hashtags you use and all that stuff. But in actuality, it's that people have been craving human connection long before social distancing was the way of our world. And I say that over and over and over again. People have been craving that human connection. And we think that social media and technology has allowed for us to be more disconnected than ever, when really we are more connected than ever. And so I used 2020 to prove to people just so many of the different ways that no, you don't need a production team. No, you don't need the fancy equipment. No, you don't need a million followers to make an impact. And it allowed for me to just eliminate the excuses firsthand, where even myself having all of those things, I have the ring lights and I have the DSLR and I have the team, but I said, you know what, screw this. Let me prove to you what you're capable of. And let me start from zero on brand new platforms. Let me prove to you, I will grow a personal account. I will grow a business account. I will start on a new platform that I know nothing about. And let me prove to you how you truly can grow when you put community first. Because no, it's not about all of that fancy stuff. And that's exactly what I did. I gave some of the biggest keynotes of my career from my kitchen. The reason why you and I are here today is because of TikTok. And some of my best friends in the
Mm-hmm.
entire world, I have yet to squeeze in real life. And it is because we're using these tools versus letting these tools use us. And that was a very long-winded answer about ultimately just how important it is to put yourself out there and not worry about just some of the bullshit that like doesn't even matter at all.
So I want to actually dial into that mentality a little bit further because we have a lot of e-commerce store owners and entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast. And I think that's one of the largest, that really ties into the whole concept of imposter syndrome. I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect enough. Whether your face is in front of the marketing or it's a product, whatever it may be, we often doubt ourselves that we can't make it in the same space that everyone else is. But I really love how you touched on the fact that it's more about connection and community than it is about getting your product out there or getting your business out there. Because the pandemic really did shift the way we looked at social media. It made us want to connect more on it and not shop as much online and not scroll through ads as much. The amount of ad blockers I've installed on my Chrome extensions and my Instagram are insane because I'm there to connect with people. So how do you think that mentality can really, I guess, catapult these online entrepreneurs' businesses? Or what mentality do you think they need to put in place to make sure that they're not dealing with this imposter syndrome on a daily basis?
Well, what we learned from 2020 and especially from you and I being on TikTok is just how the most powerful influencer for your business might not actually be a celebrity or somebody who has millions of followers. It might actually be you. And we
Mm-hmm.
look at the data time and time again where people are more inclined to trust businesses where the leadership in some capacity is forward facing, whether they are forward facing on the accounts of your business or your product, or whether you yourself are establishing some sort of a personal brand. And in that sense, it's a cliche because it's true. People want to do business with people. But I also think it's important to recognize that people want to see themselves in you. They want to see someone who they love in you, or they want to see someone who they aspire to be in you. And I do believe that your product needs to have a face that is beyond just the product itself. So even if you have a t-shirt company, making sure that you have models wearing the t-shirt, like it's that simple. If
Mm-hmm.
you have a family business, sharing the story of that, where especially when we look at our last year, seeing how important it is for people to want to support local family owned small businesses. And it's not bad to have a big business. If you're a gigantic business and you're listening to this, I don't want that to deter you either. But it still is having some sort of a personal voice. We miss that a lot, where we oftentimes think that your business in terms of branding is purely your logo design, your colors, the fonts that you're using, the storefront template that you have. But we need to have some sort of a voice, and that voice should be in your product description, potentially, your product name as well. And not just like the title of your business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like each individual product, or even naming the colors, in the way that you are sending your shopping cart, forgotten shopping cart emails, or in the way that you are selling you're sending out your email confirmation or your shipping confirmation or your thank you after that, giving it some sort of a voice and knowing who that is and making it very clear internally. And that's something that I certainly learned a lot working, especially on the agency side of things when I was doing a lot more B2B. Is you think that the voice of your brand is obvious, and it's not. Maybe your company thinks that it's your social media manager. Maybe they think that it is your founder or the other founder if you have a co-founder. It's not always clear. Maybe you think that it's your mascot, but really figure out what that is. And it's possible that the voice of your brand isn't even a real person, but make somebody up. Give them like a very crystal clear persona, give them a name, give them a personality, figure out who they need to be for your target customer, but make it so very clear what that voice looks like, sounds like, the words that they use, the language that they use or don't use, and make that so very crystal clear, so that way it feels like when I'm reading the text or something that is very two-dimensional, that I know exactly who you are and who your brand represents. And also, I mean, again, as far as those who think I'm not good enough, the reason why you think you're not good enough is exactly why you need to put yourself out there. And even think of it from the point of just visibility and representation, where I don't care what color or gender or sexual orientation you are, but even just thinking about how many people say, I want to open up an online store, or I want to do merch, or I want to do drop shipping, and they make it look easy as hell. But no one really knows what's going on. There's not a lot of conversation behind it about the hard work that it actually does take, or the hard work it took to make it look that easy, or to make it actually be easy, the delegating that goes on behind it. And I think it's just so important, especially when you're doing something that is considered quote unquote non-traditional, that you wouldn't learn in a classroom, that you make yourself visible so that you show other people what is possible. And so that you can remind yourself, like, hey, remember when you were doing the typical 9 to 5 thing and how much you hated your life? Wouldn't it be so awesome if we could bottle that up and package it and share it with the world about like other options that they have if they don't want that 9 to 5 life? Just showing just different pieces of the story, the struggles, the mistakes that you made, the way that you're improving, how you want to grow your team, bleeding that culture through everything that you're doing. That will make your community that much tighter, to where maybe they would have just bought your product because they saw a really cool ad. However, they will rock with you forever, and you can keep yourself top of mind for that recurring revenue, or for those new products, or for the lifestyle brand that you're creating beyond just your business, like a podcast, for example. And that will allow for that relationship to translate far beyond just one single transaction.
I want to dial into the concept of branding. We're just talking about having a face as the forward face of your branding, whatever that may be, and how branding is not necessarily clear. And one thing that we learn pretty commonly in e-commerce or online marketing and online entrepreneurship is the concept of constantly testing. And I think we can parallel this really well to, we'll just talk about TikTok right now, because how many times did you post a TikTok in the beginning of your career that you thought was just going to go viral and then it completely flopped, right? I feel like this happens to all new creators when they start their TikTok accounts. And then you post one video that might not, you were like, oh, I'm just posting it because I need to post something today. And that is what took your brand to the next level. And I think this goes to the concept of testing the different voices and the different ways you can present yourself, your brand online. And I would love to hear you talk about your journey through that experience.
Definitely. Testing is so important, but you want to be really careful and make sure that you are testing smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, I'm thinking about a potential client who I'm actually not going to take on, and here's one of the reasons why. But one of the mistakes that she was making was, she had created the logo design for her company, and she was putting it out everywhere. Which one do you guys like? Which one's your favorite? Putting it on Facebook, putting it on Instagram. It's one thing if you are testing your things out with your audience because you want them to feel like they are a part of something. It's another thing if you are simply looking for your audience to tell you what you want to hear, or you're trying to please everyone. Those last two are big mistakes that you will make. Also, when you're putting your stuff out to an audience who it's not even who you're wanting to serve. And if you don't know who you want to serve, then that's also an issue entirely. Where when I'm thinking about audience, and we can even dive into this a little deeper, I don't think it needs to be just one avatar persona. I think it should be like a happy hour assortment of humans. But either way, when it comes to testing, I think it's really important. But I also think that most importantly, you need to take a look at that audience and make sure that they are relevant for testing. What do I mean by that? I hear a lot of times where I will have some of my entrepreneurial clients say, yeah, well, I put it out to my Instagram and they just didn't like that. And then I go to their Instagram and they have like 500 followers or 1,000 followers or even a TikTok or whatever. And I'm like, not quite a big enough audience to test, especially when it is a total random assortment of humans, or you have half of them who it's like everyone who you've known since middle school and their mom, and you're maybe getting 5 responses back and you're basing this whole big decision off of like 3 likes. So there's that. The other thing is even saying, comparing one TikTok video to the next or one Instagram Reels to the next. Okay, I see what you're doing there. However, you have to remember that in these instances, it's not a controlled audience. So every time you're putting the video out, it's to a totally different group of people. If you're doing it right, TikTok is serving your stuff to a different batch of people. Mind you, people who don't follow you. So in some cases, it's the first time they've ever seen you. And so in that sense, you can't even necessarily test one video to the next, where it might simply be how it was hashtagged, the time of day that it was posted, or just catching that particular audience on a crappy day where maybe the world was ending, because it seems like the state of our world is changing every other day. So in that sense, how can you actually test? Grabbing an assortment of humans or a focus group that is non-biased and that is within that group that you actually want to reach, and getting their opinions. From there, I also think it's really important to trust your gut. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of founders make, is they just have their gut instinct of what they're supposed to do. And most of the time, the gut instinct is either very right or very wrong. But at the very least, if you don't trust your gut is constantly going to be knocking on your door saying, why didn't you do that? And so, those are a few different things that you can do. But I think ultimately the best test that you can have, and the best test of success, is when you have your audience saying, thank you so much for that. This changed my life. I feel like you read my mind. You answered my question before I even asked it. I feel like you're speaking directly to me. And if anything, that's a great indicator of, you're on the right track of something. But just make so very sure that you're not only taking feedback from an echo chamber of humans, and that you are actually figuring out that sometimes what works and what doesn't work isn't necessarily mutually exclusive. It just might be the timing where it's not working, or the platform where it's not working. And that's something that is worth playing with. And I know that wasn't like a very organized approach, but I do think it's a great big picture breakdown of just reminding yourself not to get so caught up in the feedback. There's a very healthy balance between listening to your audience, but also being the boss and the leader of your business, and knowing ultimately direction of where you want to go, especially when another question you can ask yourself is the audience that I'm currently serving the audience that I want to continue serving? Because maybe your audience does hate what you're doing. However, you've outgrown your audience, in which case them hating what you're doing is actually a good thing, because it means that you are outgrowing them. You're starting to grow into yourself, and your brand is evolving into something completely different, in which case, great. You need to make content that is for the audience you want to serve. Otherwise, you will forever get stuck, perhaps in never growing and eventually burning out.
And then I want to talk about the next step, right? So we're talking about how to gain social followings and resonate with their audiences, but where do we fill the gaps between gaining that audience online, getting them to be excited about whatever we're selling or whatever project we're working on, and then them actually converting to viable customers? Because I feel like that's a large gap, specifically if we're using platforms such as TikTok, where people are constantly scrolling as fast as humanly possible. Your cache settings are 108 million TikToks after a week, and now we've had so many potential customers come through our content and then not become actual customers. So how do you bridge that gap with your clients?
You want to remember that marketing is a necessity, advertising is a luxury. So that's a very, very important step here, because you have a lot of people in the e-commerce space who assume that if they have a great ad that they will have a bajillion sales. However, if where the ads are taking them to, or if we then Google your brand name or your product and it looks like shit, then that ad is just going to exponentially maximize that. We sometimes blame the ads when in actuality it's the sales funnel, the landing page, and the checkout process that's actually the issue. So that's one of them. The other one is making sure that the customer journey really truly is as smooth as possible. And so in some cases, that might even mean making content around what the checkout process is like and how easy it is to make whatever miracle happen, and how fast, if it's a mattress or a couch, even going through the process of whether, from conceptualization to manufacturing to ordering to shipping to seeing it physically in your home and making that process. And I think it's also going beyond just showing the problem and the solution. We need to see the potential. We need to see what is possible for me and what this is going to do for me. And that will ultimately help. But I do think that it's also really important that when you are testing or when you are playing with content, that you're not just looking at the likes and the views, you're taking a look at your transactions. Which videos were actually converting? It could actually be that maybe you had a video that didn't get as many views. However, the people who saw it loved it, and that caused them to convert. And that would be more reason to say posting more videos like that, where it's more of the relationship building content versus maybe the universal viral content where people might just be enamored with the content or the oddly satisfying piece of the content itself versus the desire to then go and buy. But in every single case, and I heard this quote the other day, so I can't take credit for it, but people hate to be sold to, but they love shopping with their friends. And so how can you make it so that in whatever content style you're doing, you're not just saying, hey, we got these new Crocs in, or, oh my God, BOGO sale. It's how would you have that conversation with your friend? How would you have that conversation with your friend, whether it's trying on the bikini or saying how excited you are about the sale and why, or giving a testimonial from someone who has gotten it, where we're getting more of the experience of the actual product. We're getting the sell without actually selling. If your whole grid, or even if your ads look like a manufactured Canva template or a Ray-Ban spam flyer, like it's that right away is just going to be like, nope, I can't. It needs to be a great blend of connection, value, and the sale. I need to see what your product is doing, not what the features of your product is. I need to see how it is used. You need to show me, rather than just showing me the white pants. How am I going to pair the white pants? And I think that one's a little bit more obvious, but we're seeing more and more of that, where it's like, even the founders showing why they started the product or how they put together the product or what it was that they felt was so important to solve. And that's how the story was born, constantly sharing that founding story and that solve over and over and over, and never getting trapped into the salesy, greasy, yucky stuff.
I think that's such a true sentiment, especially if we think back to even paid advertising. You touched on paid advertising for a second, which is definitely a luxury for a lot of brands if you can afford it. But we're taught, even with paid advertising, you want to create a narrative-based concept for your shoppers. Even impulse buys come from a place of emotion, right? Every purchase is emotion driven. Even impulse buys off of some random store that you saw one TikTok for or one Facebook ad store. And so if you can navigate that narrative, even with one successful ad, and then have your entire branding back it up, you kind of have created the formulas for success right there.
And it's also just the pattern interruption. You mentioned a little bit earlier, how do you get people to stop scrolling? Always bring it back to the human experience, where it's not that people hate ads. People hate shitty ads. It's not that people hate emails. It's that people hate shitty emails. I will forever keep subscribed to Spanx because of the fact that I'm obsessed with Sarah Blakely, and they actually do keep coming out with really awesome products that I'm excited about. However, if I'm just being told 20% off, 50% off, sale, then I will unsubscribe. Or if it's something that I was never interested in to begin with, then I will unsubscribe. And so what does that pattern interruption actually look like? When you think about it from the consumer standpoint, they are either scrolling because they are numb or they're scrolling to numb. So how can we create that pattern interruption? Whether it is the color, the product, the text that hooks them in. Mind you, more than 80% of people are consuming content usually without sound, with the exception of TikTok, where people are fully engaged. But Instagram, Facebook, for the most part, they're not listening. So if you're not catching you with that video, I'm probably not even going to read your sales copy or your caption, to be honest. So how can we get people to stop scrolling, even if it's for a moment? And in that moment, how can we get them to see something that they could instantly become obsessed with, or see a familiar face, whether that familiar face is someone who they actually recognize, whether it's because they follow them on social media, or it is someone who they know from their community, or it's someone who kind of looks like them or kind of looks like someone who they maybe know. And how can we do that? The way to that heart, though, is absolutely some sort of an emotional pull, but sometimes it is something as simple as just giving them something different from everything else that they've ever gotten. That's one of the reasons why I do really love the slogan of TikTok for Business, which is don't make ads, make TikToks. And a big mistake that people are making is, well, they think that they can upload native ads just like they have on every other platform and it should work exactly the same, or that they can put this beautiful, masterful production together and it'll perform better than everybody else who's filming on their phones. But don't knock that part out. Really look at what's on your feed and what's getting you to stop. Take note at what's getting you to stop, whether it's a video of puppies or food, or if it's text or a political campaign. What's getting you to actually stop, and take note of that and figure out how you can potentially convert that into what it is that you're doing.
That's a really important note to touch on specifically for TikTok, because no one likes ads. We were just talking about ad blockers earlier in this episode. No one truly enjoys ads.
I love ads. Ads, like, I love it. I love it. Like, they make my life so much more convenient. They show me products that I was actually looking for or that I didn't know I needed. When your ads are curated for you and in a very mindful way, I love them. But if they're just completely random or have nothing to do with me, then I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is this?
And so, on that note, when you're scrolling through a platform like TikTok and you see some incredibly highly produced ad for 1 minute, it stunts your scrolling. You literally scroll past it because you're like, that's not a TikTok. But the amount of times that I've been caught in the middle of an actual TikTok that happens to be a sponsorship and create value through that post is, innumerable at this point. So I really like that you touched on the fact that even though we need to create a marketing and an advertising plan for our businesses, we can still utilize those pieces of the business to still connect with our community and also make sales at the same time.
Absolutely. And Victoria Jameson Krath is brilliant, I believe, at establishing what that native ad can look like and should look like. Jara Foster Fell is another one who is awesome
Amazing.
at
Love
it.
her.
There are so many different creators who it's one of those things where you're like, was that an ad, or was that, I don't know, but I
I don't remember.
and It's Me Tinks has also completely changed the game in terms of how she does it, where she's completely transparent in terms of the way that she is influencing. But those are some great names. But also, even when I look at some of the smaller business, Tassel Amore, Cassie Drennan, I think is her last name. And I realize now I've listed pretty much all females, and I know that there are some dudes out there, and dudes are actually primarily my audience and my clients. But and even Steveston Creative is another one. Where it's looking at the ways that small businesses are becoming more forward facing and showing their product and showing their stories, and that will help them tremendously.
So before we go, you did touch on influencers for a second, and I know that you are an expert on influencer marketing, and I love all of the insight that you've given on your social media. But we have a lot of interest at Zendrop with influencer marketing and how to utilize it for your online business. So I'd love if you could touch on just your top tips or kind of the best way for a new entrepreneur to enter into influencer marketing if they've never done it before.
Yeah, definitely. Rule number one: follower count is overrated. Take a look at, don't just look at their numbers or even their views. Take a look at their engagement. And by their engagement, I don't mean just likes. I think likes are very passive. Look at the comments that people are leaving on their videos and on their profiles. Really take a moment to figure out what their community is like and who's participating and how. Because if their audience is simply leaving cute little emojis and saying, "Oh, that's hot," or if maybe, like, let's say you have a product that you primarily want to cater to females, however, the only person or only people who are commenting on their videos are males, okay, maybe not the audience demo that you want to go after. Make sure that you do ask where their demographic is located, because that's another thing too. I know someone who legitimately has 2 million legitimate followers. However, they are all in China. And so even though this particular creator is American and happens to be huge in China, and it's totally legitimate. Like, he is all over press and magazines and modeling shoots in China, even though he is fully American. That's not really going to help that business that is located in LA and doesn't ship internationally. So, asking where they're located. And also taking a look at their feed and seeing if your product makes sense. Do they talk about products that are similar to yours, or had they already talked about your products or your brand? In which case, that's also a great place to start. Take a look at who's following you. If that influencer has no idea who you are, unless they've already spoken very distinctly about, say, a problem or a solution or a product that you offer, then that might not be the best partnership. And in fact, the best partnership might be somebody who's already obsessed with you, loves you, and maybe even has less than 25,000 followers and would be willing to hop on as a potential ambassador, trade collaborator. And you can potentially, I do believe very much in fair compensation, and I speak to this so often, but I also look at things from both the branding perspective and the marketing perspective of a lot of your businesses that your marketing budget was cut or it's non-existent. And so how can you establish a true partnership where both sides of the gamut are truly winning? And so there is room for trade. There is a time and a place for that, as long as you respect, appreciate, and admire who it is that you're working with, and you're treating each other fairly in terms of those deliverables, assets, and expectations. So taking a look at who's following you, and then also just making very, very clear what your expectations are. Letting them know what your objective is, because no, it's not obvious that your objective is that you want conversions and sales, because in some cases it might actually make sense to do some sort of an awareness campaign first. If you're thinking that an influencer is going to be able to create incredible sales, I just realized that my groceries are currently being dropped off at the moment. 1 second, Amazon. So if you're thinking that you're going to have one post and then all of a sudden you're going to go viral and be successful, that, like, there's like a 1% chance that could happen. And that 1% would have to be based upon a follower or an influencer who legitimately has a community of tight-knit millions of people. So it needs to be something ideally that's recurring, because it takes someone at this point 21 to 24 touch points to make a buying decision. And so, and when you're looking at your own personal consumption habits, like, recognizing that is true. So how do you create those 21 to 24 touch points? Finding either 1 or 6 or 8 influencers who are talking about roughly the same thing, not scripted, in their own words, and establishing familiarity among a common audience where they are then able to create that trust and see your product in action, and hopefully to where they love it so much that even beyond the campaign, they'll still be using what it is that you are offering.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I've truly enjoyed speaking with you. You're incredibly knowledgeable, and as always, so entertaining to listen to, whether it's on TikTok or in person.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you for having me, and looking forward to connecting with anyone listening beyond just this podcast. And you can find me on social at Giselle Ugarte, and looking forward to that.